This video is the second part of part 3 of Dunk and Egg, the Mystery Night. So if you haven't watched part 1 of this, I'd watch that first. We also have Dunk and Egg part 1 and 2 you can watch if you're not caught up on them. So where we left off, it's the next morning and Dunk is a bit hungover but decides to enter the match despite Egg's protests. And Egg really does have a good point about protesting him not doing the jousting. Dunk hasn't had a lot of practice with jousting. The last time he jousted in a tournament was at Ashford tournament. And he's a bit out of practice even though he's practiced 1 or 2 times. He's much better in the melee and hand-to-hand and fighting with sword and such, so jousting really isn't his thing. While Dunk is waiting for his turn to come, he is watching his other fellow Hedge Knights compete. Sir Kyle the Cat purposely loses against the Lord of Bitterbridge, and he does that in hopes of getting on his good side and then in his service. So afterwards he loses and compliments the Lord and goes, "Oh, you were so fierce out there. Oh, by the way, do you remember that I made you your first sword as a boy?" Unfortunately, this plan does the opposite, and the Lord of Bitterbridge feels that Sir Kyle is too fragile to be a knight at Bitterbridge, and basically looks at him like he's a crazy when he mentions building him his first sword. And at the same time, he ends up taking Sir Kyle the Cat's armor and horse, because when you lose a jousting match, you get the rights to that other knight's armor and horse, and Sir Kyle the Cat can't ransom it back, so this is pretty much the end of his Hedge Knight days. Meanwhile, Sir Ball is doing great in all his matches, and he is as fierce as his mouth is, and it really seems like he has a great chance of winning the tournament and the Dragon Egg. Finally, after watching his friends and others compete, Dunk faces off against Sir Uther Underleaf, but Dunk does it as a mystery knight known as the Gallows Knight, just in case anyone should recall him as the knight from Ashford. There are people that still hold a little bit of a grudge that because of him and the Trial of 7 that happened, Baelor Breakspear ended up being killed on accident by his brother Maekar I. So there's still a little tension with that. But unfortunately, Dunk loses when Underleaf's lance hits Dunk right between the eyes on his helm. He blacks out and awakens 4 hours later, being taken care of by a maester. After talking to the maester and just him being amazed that Dunk is still alive, because that hit very well could have killed him, Dunk ends up recovering enough to head back to his tent, where he's going to have to forfeit his horse and armor to Underleaf. So Egg is ecstatic to find that Dunk actually lived, and he's like, "Oh, I knew you couldn't die." He's super bummed out because he finds out that Dunk is heading over to Underleaf's tent to hand over his armor and his horse, and he doesn't have the money to ransom it back, and that basically means that Dunk isn't going to be able to be a Hedge Knight anymore. And he has a conversation with Egg saying, you know, maybe it's time that you ended up learning from an actual knight who can teach you more. And Egg's like, no, I want to learn from you, and gets really upset with them. And there's even other people that are like, hey, if you sneak out on your horse and your armor right now, it might be the best thing for you because you don't want to lose being a Hedge Knight. And Dunk, as honorable as ever, is like, nope. And he ends up heading to Underleaf's tent, which there he finds out that Underleaf is more of a merchant than he is a Hedge Knight. He makes a lot of money, and he does it off of doing bets, and he bribes the Lord of Games and basically says, hey, match me up against this guy, I'll pay you a little bit of money. He then bets on himself, and everyone else bets against him because, you know, he matches himself up against people you'd think he'd lose against, and then he ends up winning and he rakes in the cash. And Dunk also learns there that Underleaf was paid to strike him in the helm and kill him. And Underleaf would have actually killed him and made sure the lance went through his eye slot if he had been paid a little bit more. So now Dunk's kind of upset that Underleaf, one, is doing bribery to get more money, but at the same time someone tried to kill him. Underleaf also reveals that he doesn't want to take the horse or armor from Dunk, but he wants Dunk to travel with him in his service to pay back his debts. And what he wants him to do is go to 20 tournaments with him, grow a beard, look super fierce, compete against him, and since many will think Underleaf can't win against this huge giant of a man, he'll end up raking in the money when he bets on himself and everyone bets against him. And Dunk is like, no, this is not going to happen, this is going to ruin my honor, people are going to learn about it, I'm not going to do this. The horse and the equipment is yours. And he leaves the tent, but when he leaves the tent and goes back to his own, he notices Egg is missing, but his books, mule, and bedroll are all still by the tent. So this instantly makes him suspicious, as if Egg had taken off with being upset, he would have taken all his stuff with him. Searching for Egg, he happens upon Sir Fiddler, who is getting ready for his next tilt. Lord Arland sees Dunk and spits out his water, surprised to see him alive, which is pretty suspicious if you ask me. The Fiddler, however, isn't surprised at all, and when Dunk asks for a word, the Fiddler tells Dunk he can have all the words he wants and leads Dunk into his personal pavilion. Again, Sir Fiddler starts talking a little bit weird. He says he knew Dunk wasn't dead because his dreams are never wrong. The Fiddler tells Dunk as soon as he unhorses the Underleaf, he will demand Underleaf gives Dunk his armor and horseback. The Fiddler also offers Dunk a better mount. So he's really trying to sweeten up Dunk, but Dunk refuses, instead asking the Fiddler if he has seen Egg. The Fiddler says he can have his men look for him, which makes Dunk pretty uneasy, because when he says, "my men," and the Fiddler's supposed to be a hedge knight, those two don't really add up. Dunk then tells the Fiddler that the Fiddler is not a hedge knight, and the Fiddler agrees. Before the Fiddler can reveal his true name, Gorman Peak walks in the tent. The Fiddler leaves, and Dunk confesses to Gorman Peak he knows about the bribery going on. Gorman Peak tells Dunk that he'd have his throat slit if his grace wouldn't take it ill. And, again, the warning flags are going off that Gorman Peak is calling a hedge knight the Fiddler his grace. Peak explains the wedding was used as an excuse to get like-minded lords together to support the Black Dragon. So then the question came, why are they striking 16 years later after the first Blackfire Rebellion? And it's revealed that many lords had sons and daughters taken to King's Landing to ensure the peace. However, when the spring sickness came through, most of those hostages died, with those hostages no longer holding them back, and Baelor Breakspear dead, and Maekar sulking and at odds with the Hand. Now is the right time to strike. After revealing all this, Gorman Peak leaves, threatening Dunk that if he leaves the castle, he will know he's a traitor and he will die. After Gorman Peak leaves, Alan Cockshaw starts being uncharacteristically nice to Dunk. Before he can think on it, the dragon egg goes missing and they arrest Sir Glendon Ball for it. While trying to arrest them, Glendon kills 3 men but is finally detained, and they find the dragon egg in his saddlebags. Dunk can't believe he really stole it, as he had been jousting all day, but he doesn't have time to focus on Glendon when Alan Cockshaw claims to know where Egg is and directs him to a well. There, Alan confesses he bribed Underleaf to kill Dunk because he wanted the Fiddler's attention and was jealous that the Fiddler was drawn to Dunk due to his dreams. When Dunk hesitates, he slices Dunk's arm with a dagger. Luckily, Dunk is huge and uses a loose well brick and his size to smash in Alan's teeth and throw him down the well. Maynard Plum helps patch up Dunk's arm and reveals he is a spy for Bloodraven, and the Fiddler is actually Daemon Blackfire's son, also known as Daemon. After patching his arm, Plum reveals Egg was taken to the Sept after revealing his ring to a maester so he could send a letter to his father, and he was sending the letter to his father so that Dunk could remain a knight. So it was really a good purpose that he was doing it for, but the maester had him delivered to Lord Butterwell instead. Butterwell, not being the bravest man, freaked out thinking Maekar sent Egg as a spy, and Egg convinced him his father Maekar was on his way with an army. Dunk ends up heading to the Sept, and he finds Lord Butterwell cowering before the altar with 2 guards and Egg. Sure enough, Butterwell is freaked out, telling Dunk that he didn't do anything to harm the boy and the rebellion wasn't his idea. He claims Tom Heddle told him what to do and that Heddle is married to his eldest daughter and controls his garrison. He also reveals that the phrase had left when Egg told them falsely that he was his father's spy and Maekar was coming with an army. But before Dunk and Egg can leave, Tom Heddle arrives with guards. Butterwell tells Heddle to leave Dunk and Egg alone, but he challenges Dunk. And Heddle really underestimates him. He's like, "Oh, I saw you joust, and I see how poor you are at this, so this is going to be easy. I don't care if you're the boy's guard." But in the fight, Dunk ends up cutting off Heddle's arm in the fight and then stabs him through the throat. And, says, "I told you I was better with the sword," which was an amazing scene. Dunk urges Egg to run with Butterwell, but escape him at the first chance and head to Maidenpool, and tells Egg he has business to finish here. Egg escapes and Dunk heads to the feasting. There he reveals that Glendon Ball is innocent and that Gorman Peak has been bribing people to lose against Sir Fiddler, or Daemon the Younger. Daemon is taken aback by this, and doesn't really know what to say at first because he was thinking that he had been winning on his own merit. And really, Gorman Peak had to do this. He had to bribe people to let Daemon the Younger win, because who's going to follow a man that just gets totally obliterated in jousting? Eventually, Daemon demands that a trial by combat happens between Glendon Ball and himself to decide what is exactly the truth. They fetch Glendon Ball, who has been being tortured, and he has missing teeth, he's blackened, he has a bloody face, he has 3 nails on his fingers torn off. He's in terrible shape. Despite being in such bad condition, he agrees to ride a tilt against Daemon to decide his guilt or innocence. As Glendon Ball is getting ready, Dunk gives him the same advice Baelor gave Dunk during his trial of 7. Use a longer tournament lance so that Daemon's lance won't reach him before Glendon's lance hits him. And I really liked that advice came back and that Dunk could give it to someone else. On the field, Daemon has now washed the black dye out of his hair so that he has the Targaryen hair showing, and he has the deep purple eyes, and he also wears the colors of the Blackfires, a black dragon on a red field. Glendon and Daemon ride out, and Glendon quickly unhorses Daemon to the screams of Gordon Peak. One knight calls Daemon the Brown Dragon, and people begin to laugh. The laughter quickly dies when a trumpet blows and an army appears outside the White Halls. Many lords, along with 3 knights of the King's Guard, and Bloodraven himself with 300 raven's teeth, appear. Daemon gets up and calls for them to fight, and now is the time, but he's basically told to piss on that and that they'd rather live. So quickly all these lords that had gathered to help Daemon start the second Blackfire Rebellion are like, screw this, we had the element of surprise, but now we don't, we're gonna get out of here, and a lot of them try to start to sneak off before the outside army can get to them. But before all of them can leave, the knights in attendance are rounded up along with the lords, and including Dunk. Lord Gorman Peak and Black Tom Hiddle are beheaded, with their heads on spears outside of Bloodraven's tent. Finally, a knight of the King's Guard brings Dunk to Bloodraven's tent, where he finds Egg, Frey, and his heir Walder, and Lord Butterwell. Bloodraven strips Lord Butterwell of his castle and allows him to keep 1/10 of his wealth before dismissing him. And he's still simpering and being like, oh, you're so great, thank you so much. And Bloodraven tells Frey he will speak with him later and dismisses him as well. Bloodraven turns to Dunk and questions him, and Egg tells Bloodraven that they had it well in hand before Bloodraven showed up. And this is really cool because the longer we see Egg, the more we see him just become more defiant and have more of that dragon's blood in him and just stick up to people. Dunk ends up telling Bloodraven that Sir Kyle the Cat, Maynard Plum, and Glendon Ball helped in aiding Dunk and Egg deal with the traitors, and Egg demands that they be released and rewarded. So yay, Sir Kyle the Cat can actually remain a hedge knight, which is super great. Bloodraven at this remarks that Egg is just not a prince now, but a dragon, and that Daemon did have prophet dreams, but the dragon he saw born in the White Halls was Egg himself, not the dragon from the egg. Threatening to take Egg back to King's Landing, he instead allows them to leave. Egg has one final question though. Where did the egg go? Bloodraven replies, were I to guess, I'd say someone climbed up inside the privy shaft. A child could do that. Dunk thinks a child or maybe a dwarf, and 1,000 eyes in one. 1,000 eyes in one. Why shouldn't some of them belong to a trope of comic dwarfs? So that is the end of Dunk and Egg Part 3. Unfortunately, there's no more stories as of right now, but George R. R. Martin said that he is planning on releasing anywhere from 3 to 6 more. So I guess we'll see. And also in October, he's bringing all the stories together into a book with illustrations, which is super cool, and I'm excited to finally get that. So anyways, make sure you come back next Wednesday where we're going to do a random Game of Thrones video, or come back on Sunday when we talk about the 9 Penny Kings. Traveling throughout Westeros for employment, named Sir Arland of Pennytree. Sir Arland found Dunk as a small boy in Flea Bottom, parentless and wild. Sir Arland changed his life by taking him in and raising him, often giving Dunk praise, singing, being humble, upbeat, and treating Dunk with respect and rarely beating him, unless he deserved it. His optimistic nature and kindness made a huge impression on Dunk. When the story begins, King Daeron II, whose the last video we talked about, is on the throne, and Dunk is about 16 or 17. Sir Arland dies after catching a chill on their way to Ashford to attend a tournament. Dunk, knowing no other life, decides to take Arland's armor, horses, and money, and try to make it to Ashford to